I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and whether you're on Verizon or Sprint, you've got a lot of different 4G Android devices to choose from. I've got two of those in my hands right now. One is the Motorola DROID 4, which is available now on Verizon. It has a QWERTY keyboard and packs a dual-core processor, an 8-megapixel camera, and more. Then I have the Samsung Epic 4G Touch, known by its full name as the Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch, also available from Sprint for $199.99. It's packing a 1.2 GHz dual-core Exynos processor, a 4.5-inch display, an 8-megapixel camera, and more. Now, which one of these is a must-have device? Which one would you choose? Which one's in a battle royale between Android phones? Which one's going to come out on top? We'll find out in the dogfight. But first, some love to Best Buy Mobile for hooking us up with phones like the DROID 4 and like the Epic 4G Touch. For using our one-paw bandit game, when you go into Best Buy Mobile, you won't deal with rebates. You'll get the after rebate price. You don't have to deal with paperwork or waiting 8 to 10 weeks. You can get your phone and walk out the door with the after rebate price at Best Buy Mobile. And be sure to play to win on our one-paw bandit game on PhoneDog.com with some of those cool devices that Best Buy sends over to us. Let's take a look right now. DROID 4, Epic 4G Touch. Let's take a look at the phone applications between these two devices, and let me actually make sure that I don't have any phone calls that I've made on the DROID 4 before I do that, because I don't think my friends would like it very much if their numbers were shown up on camera, now would they? You can see the dialers here, and again, running Android 2.3 on both of these devices, but drastically different user experiences depending on which device you go with. On the DROID 4 you have that blue color scheme like I mentioned in part 1, then over here you have kind of the gray and kind of a colorful scheme with the call button down here, messaging, and then of course back, whereas down here you have the ability to add a contact, you can call, and then you can use voice search as well. Tabs up at the top, kind of similar here, and you can dial, let's say, Billy Bob, for example, or actually Phone Dog Aaron. That's perfect because that's a test number that I have, one of the demo phones. And you can see my picture pops up and the mobile number pops up, and then I can populate that right there pretty easily. So I can pop that back up so you can see, and I actually have 10 matches in there. For numbers, I can go to recent, I can go to contacts, I can go to favorites, and then that's it on this device. Over here I have logs, contacts, favorites, and I can still do the same thing over here with Jim Rogers, favorites, and then I can see groups as well. So we'll go into Jim Rogers, for example, and take a look, and you can just see what they look like. We'll go into contacts here, and we'll do Billy Bob, and you can see the difference. I do like the fact that TouchWiz 4 has a pretty decent personal information management system going on here with the tabs. You can easily see history, activities, media, the phone numbers. Over here you can see history as well just by clicking on this tab, and if you had it, it would pop up. But I like the way it's laid out over here. I think the tabs are a little bit more organized, and it just looks better, and you can easily on both of these favorite that respective contact and make that, if that's somebody you call on a regular basis, you can favorite it and make that the case. So again, 5 home screens here, 7 home screens here. Let's take a look at the speeds on both of these devices. I want to show you some speed tests between Verizon's 4G LTE, and then I do have 4G running here, but it keeps flipping back and forth between 4G and 3G. The way WiMAX works on Sprint, it's in the 2500 megahertz spectrum. 2500 megahertz roughly means, or for the layman, that means when you walk in the building, you're going to lose your service most likely. The megahertz frequency is so high that it can't penetrate buildings very well, whereas Verizon's operates in the 700 megahertz frequency much easier in terms of penetrating buildings. So that's why I'm sitting in my office, even though there's a window right in front of this video right now, it's still going in and out when it comes to 4G. So we'll load up speed tests on both of these and take a look there. I agree. And let's see if we can find some servers. That's going to be a challenge as well. Looks like I found it relatively quickly. Wichita, Kansas, not where I want it to be. Let's turn on GPS. Okay, GPS doesn't seem to want to work on this thing and lock it in. So let's take a look at both of these. Begin test on both. And we'll begin here, and I'll show you the speed differences between these two respective devices. Loading up tests right here, and you can see the real pain. Again, it's running on Sprint's 3G right now because the 4G indicator is not lit up. I mean, you can see how terrible Sprint's 3G has been, and there are several different forum threads across the internet. This is not a Charlotte thing. It's not isolated to one particular city. I've heard it from several places, from Charleston, South Carolina, to Ohio, to Kansas, to Texas. I've heard some reports in California as well, though when I was in San Diego, it seemed to work fine. The reports that I've heard come from the LA area and come from San Francisco. Sprint's having some major issues with their 3G network speeds. You can see that's unacceptable for download. So at this point, that's, unless you're running on 4G, if you're in an area, unless you're in a market that has decent 3G speed, you're going to have some issues. Download over here, 4G LTE, 17.37 megabits per second. Verizon promises a download speed of their LTE between 5 and 12 megabits per second with an upload of 2 to 5. So you can see it exceeds the expectations right there on the network side. And this is a device that supposedly is going to be global ready when Verizon enables the fix. So it's not ready just yet, but it should be global ready at some point this year. So if you're planning on traveling maybe at the end of the year or in early next year to Europe or somewhere else overseas, that might be the device for you on Verizon. So again, just terrible speeds over here. And it leads me to wonder why that's the case. 4G is a little bit better. I see speeds between 0.8 megabits per second, about 1.2. But compare that to LTE on both AT&T and Verizon, and you can see there's a major issue. Let's load up Quadrant Standard on both of these devices and take a look at that. Quadrant Standard, let's see here. There it is. And of course, Quadrant Standard supports dual-core processors now, so the result's much more accurate. That said, take it with a grain of salt. This is just a benchmark test. This is not intended to provide any sort of indicator of day-to-day performance, but we can still take a look, and while we're doing that, I'll talk about call quality. Actually, call quality has been pretty good on both of these devices. Motorola does a fantastic job when it comes to the wireless radio. The wireless radio is great on this device, and I've been really, really pleased with it, and the earpiece is nice and loud. Same thing over here, earpiece has been nice and loud. Sprint's network, at least in terms of voice calls, has been perfectly fine. And the earpiece is nice and loud. Speakerphone pretty decent on both of these as well. Again, where you're struggling is the data over here on Sprint's 3G network. Otherwise, pretty decent on both of those. I took those to respective Verizon dead spot in Northeast Charlotte and a Sprint dead spot in South Charlotte, and I was pretty pleased. I mean, it was choppy. It was typical call breakup type stuff, but they both performed pretty admirably. If call quality is your most important thing, I think you're going to be really pleased with the Motorola Droid 4. I do find that the voice quality, haven't had enough coffee today, is pretty decent on the Motorola Droid 4. And same thing with the Epic 4G Touch, provided you're in an area that has decent Sprint service. So keep that in mind. So Quadrant Standard is loading up right now. We can do the benchmark result and take a look. And we'll load it up. 3,518 over here. And then over on this one, it's still loading up right now. I have a feeling it's going to come in a little bit lower because, at least on the processing front, you get a great processor over on the Epic 4G Touch. That Exynos dual-core processor is absolutely fantastic. And it really shows in things like Quadrant Standard, or when you're doing, performing with the device on a day-to-day basis, it does a pretty good job. Motorola's is still loading up here. And let's get it to run through here and see what we can do with the speeds. Come on, do its little test. Let's get this rolling. Oh, and then front-facing cameras, by the way, on both devices. So we'll proceed and take a look, and you get 2,212 here, but you can really take a look at both of these devices and see the difference between a Super AMOLED Plus display and a regular QHD display. Colors absolutely pop over on the Samsung Epic 4G Touch as opposed to the Motorola Droid 4. Let's take a look at the cameras on both of these devices. 8-megapixel cameras with 1080p HD video recording. We'll load up the cameras and show you what those look like. Now obviously we're running user interfaces on both of these devices, so you can see, even though they both have similar cameras, a very different experience here. You can see the gallery preview right here on both devices, and then over here a little pull-out menu that gives me access to things like brightness, access to colors, ISO, white balance, things like that, flash on and off. Whereas over here you've got kind of a similar setup. You have the ability to quickly switch from video to physical shots, and then you have the ability to switch back and forth between front-facing cameras and, of course, your rear-facing cameras. Settings are located over here. I do find the Epic 4G Touch to be a little bit better when it comes to camera settings. It seems to be a little bit more fluid and easy to use. So we're going to bring over the Bored Dude's Magnetic Eraser, which I just happen to have over here on the desk. And we'll load this up and focus in, press and hold. No physical camera buttons on either of these devices. And you can see over here, press and hold. So I think you're going to be happy with the camera quality on both of these devices. I think the Droid 4 does a good job, but in the end, I think the Epic 4G Touch is a little bit ahead in the image department. You can see even when focusing in, very clear, beautiful color, and again, neither of these are going to exactly replace your fantastic 26-megapixel camera, but still pretty decent image quality on both. By a small margin, it goes to the Epic 4G Touch. Now, before we close out, I want to show you the Play Store. The Android market's now being called the Play Store. Google Play is a one-stop shop for everything: apps, music, books, and movies. And you can access all that through Google Play, in addition to some other things like Samsung's Media Hub, which comes pre-installed on the Samsung Epic 4G Touch and allows you to download movies for rent and download TV shows for rent as well. And that's a pretty cool little feature. But Google Play is over here. Play Store, also called Play Shop, if you're, interestingly enough, if you're using a UK device, they call it Play Shop. So I don't know why Play Shop, I don't know if that's different than Play Store, I don't know, Shop is what they use. But apps are here, and the layout's pretty similar, but you can see that they've changed the look of the icon, and then of course changed some minor things in terms of marketing and things like that, but you can again see how laggy it's performing right now. So that's the Play Store, and then of course Gmail interface capabilities. You can see the differences here of how it looks on Motorola's user interface as opposed to Samsung's. and you can see pretty similar, but just some minor color differences between the two. But again, the 4.5-inch display means it's pretty easy to read text over here and do anything like YouTube content and more. Now, this is a dogfight. One has to win, and it's really, really tough here because you have to evaluate the whole package in a dogfight. It's not just the phone, it's the carrier as well, because in the US, these devices are locked, with the exception of some GSM devices. These devices are obviously locked to their carrier. So the winner by a narrow margin is the Samsung Epic 4G Touch, and it's a narrow margin because the Droid 4 almost takes it. The network speeds here are bad. Sprint has to do something with the 3G. It's incredibly poor, and it's to the point where I struggle to recommend Sprint's network, at least if you're in a 3G market. If you're in WiMAX and you're always connected to WiMAX, it's not terrible, but it's at the point where something's got to be done. There are numerous complaint threads, and I'm not hearing anything besides the Network Vision project, which is still kind of under wraps, and they're not really releasing a lot of information. By narrow margin, at least in terms of a device, the dual-core Exynos processor over here is fantastic. This device is really awesome. Big screen, big beautiful screen at that. 8-megapixel camera, a nice battery for nice longevity, 1800 milliamp hour battery. You're going to make it through the day with this device with moderate use. Over here, beautiful device. If you're using it for email, the QWERTY keyboard is going to be fantastic, and it does a lot of things really well, including some great 4G LTE speeds. Otherwise, by a narrow margin, at least in terms of performance, it goes to the Samsung Epic 4G Touch. Much more coverage to come on PhoneDog.com with both of these devices, so keep it locked. Be sure to check out our rankings program as well. You like one of these devices? Let us know. PhoneDog.com/rankings. Vote for your favorite phone. Leave a review, and you could win a phone. More information on that at PhoneDog.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well, PhoneDog_Aaron, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/PhoneDogAB. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.